coming up after 4 o'clock. We're going to play you a little clip of this podcast called The Hidden Truth, Las Vegas Shooter, hosted by Jim Breslo, about what's with all the unknown about the Las Vegas shooting. He had the brother, Bruce Paddock, the brother of Stephen Paddock, on. And we'll play you a clip of that and then talk to Jim Breslo. John and Ken Show. Deborah Mark has the news. KFI AM 640. Right now, we're going to talk just a moment with Jim Breslo, who has a podcast, Hidden Truth, Las Vegas Shooter, HiddenTruthShow.com. And it's a show devoted to trying to unravel all the mystery surrounding that mass murder spree by Stephen Paddock. He had Stephen Paddock's brother on the other day, Bruce Paddock. Remember the loony they found in the San Fernando Valley who was living as a vagrant for years? And they found he had a child porn collection? Well, somehow Jim Breslo got Bruce Paddock to sit still for an interview. We're going to play about 3 minutes of it, and then we're going to talk to Jim about how he got Bruce, what was in the rest of the interview, and just about all the bizarre secrecy around the Las Vegas shooting. Anyway, here is Hidden Truth, Jim Breslo interviewing Bruce Paddock, the brother of Stephen Paddock.
I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning for my 2 o'clock medicine, and I saw that, that CNN and every channel had this shooting, and I looked again, and they said Stephen Paddock, and I said, what? So I called my mom, and my mom answered the phone, and I said, is that Steve? And she said, I guess so. And I asked her, was he sick like me? She didn't want to talk about it. See, most of this interview is not going to go very well. And I don't expect a whole lot of this to be aired because of my feeling for other people. I care more about the people that were hurt and what it's got to be like to sit on the wrong end of a gun. Why they sell these weapons.
So what did she say as far as when you asked her whether he was sick?
She didn't want to talk about it. So I hung up, and I saw that he'd killed a whole bunch of people. And I realized that being sick like me wouldn't make you want to kill a bunch of people or even shoot at them.
So you think you kind of understand what was going on in his head?
That I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to presume what happened was pain and the loss of a lot of things. The loss of the ability to control everything because he was always the controlling brother. He's 7 years older than us and raised us, took care of us. He was the father. And he was always Mom's best choice. He had the bright red Volkswagen all the neighbors wanted. And he was always in school.
So he was the good kid?
I guess. Yeah. He was the one always punishing us for being the bad ones. I don't know if that makes him the good one or not. But we never got punished by our mother. It was always Steve or a combination of Steve and Pat.
But you said he was controlling. What do you know about his controlling nature?
His dream. His dream to have everything. Looking up at the crystal on the counter tops going, yeah, all that's mine when in the inheritance. When she passes away, everything's mine, All in his mind that the whole world was his. I mean, he went out and earned it. What he earned, he earned himself. He had his first apartment building. I think he was still working for the IRS and had his first apartment in North Hollywood. Bought the building. Took out the central water system and put in water heaters in every apartment.
How was he able to afford that building? Did he have help?
Yeah, he's always had my mom.
All right, that's Bruce Paddock, the brother of Stephen Paddock, the mass killer in Las Vegas, and he's being interviewed by Jim Breslo. The podcast is Hidden Truth, and we have Jim Breslo on the line here. Jim, thanks for taking time to come on with us.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on.
How did you get Bruce Paddock on your show, especially since he's facing child pornography charges?
Yeah, well, it was somewhat poetic because the show kind of started on the theory that there's a lot of stories that the mainstream media has kind of lost touch with due to their obsession with covering everything Trump. So it's poetic because it was known that he was going to be in court for a preliminary hearing, and all I did was send a reporter over there, and she was the only reporter there. He's sitting there in a wheelchair waiting for his lawyer, and she approaches him, and she's, got no shame, goes up to anybody and chit-chats with him and so on, goes right on up to him. Next thing you know, she's offering him a cigarette, and the two of them get chatting. Now, it wasn't super easy to get it. Obviously, his first answer was no, but through some various back and forth, eventually he agreed to come on my show.
Hey, I saw a little video clip of the interview. Very, very nervous, emotionally fragile guy. It looked like he was, physically shaking in the clip that I looked at. What was it like being across from him?
Well, he actually has an engaging personality, believe it or not, so I was quite comfortable with him, but by the same token, you're sitting there clearly seeing that something is off. Considering the charges he's facing, felony child pornography charges, I did not talk to him about the charges. That was kind of part of the deal, but he believes he's going to get off of them based on statute of limitations. I didn't hear about him getting off of it based on the merits necessarily, but, I have nothing to say about whether he had or didn't have it, but, he acknowledges himself that there's some bad DNA in the family.
Yeah, did he expand on that? He talked about he and Stephen had the same mental problems.
Okay, so he talked about, was he sick like me? And I naturally assumed that meant mental illness, right? Because he's talking about killing 58 people. And I realized at the end of the interview that I really didn't properly follow up on that. So I called him later, and I said, by the way, you mentioned the sickness. What is the mental health condition that you're talking about? And he goes, what are you talking about, mental health problem? I go, well, you said that you suffer from a mental... He says, no, I was talking about my back. So he has spinal stenosis, and it's major. He's in a wheelchair. If you look at, on his neck is a huge scar. He's about to go back into surgery. His brother Stephen had back surgery when he was young. So he says he was talking about the spinal stenosis. Now, on the one hand, that seems to make zero sense, because why would back problems, no matter how serious they are, cause you to go kill a bunch of people? But if you heard what he said, he's essentially saying that, hey, this back pain is so bad that, I've considered suicide over pain. And that is somewhat understandable, right? But how he, in his mind, connects that with, oh my gosh, I could imagine being in this much pain and therefore wanting to kill people, that's a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, to try to kill hundreds.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's the DNA issue, which goes from the father. And as a lot of people have heard about, the father being on the FBI's most wanted list, a notorious con man, ended up assuming a different name, abandoned the family. So at one point, he does reference there being bad DNA in the family. And we've talked to a number of psychiatrists and so on, and there is belief that that can be inherited. Being a psychopath can be part genetics and part nurturing, which they had bad of both.
Right. I mean, yeah, because a psychopath's brain, I've had a doctor on who does brain scans of psychopaths, and it's actually structured differently. You could spot a psychopath by looking at his brain scan.
Exactly.
And that's the inherited part.
Brain scan, though, not a dead brain scan, because some people, and actually I was talking to Bruce himself about this, because he wanted to know, what did the autopsy show? He said his mother, who's 90 and still alive, said there must have been something wrong with his brain. She wanted to see the results of the autopsy. Well, the autopsy is back, and they said no abnormalities in the brain. But that would be something like a brain tumor, apparently. Right. But as you point out, I think that there is some type of structure, brain waves or whatever, but my understanding is the person has to be alive when you're scanning the brain to see that. But yes, absolutely, there is some trait that can be inherited, but that's only half of the game, is my understanding. Then you got to combine that with poor nurturing, and here you had no father.
Jim, hang on a while. We'll continue in just a moment. Jim Breslo, host of the Hidden Truth podcast. It's devoted exclusively to the Las Vegas shooting, and he recently had Bruce Paddock, Stephen Paddock's brother, on as a guest. John and Ken Show, KFI, your chance to win $1,000 is coming up. We continue with Jim Breslo, host of the Hidden Truth podcast, devoted exclusively to the Las Vegas shooting, which still has a lot of mystery about it. And recently he had Stephen Paddock's brother, Bruce, on the show. And we're going to continue with Jim here. Jim, the brother that you had on, Bruce, he talked about thinking his dad was dead until he was 19.
Yeah, crazy story. So basically the mom raised the boys to believe that their father was dead because she knew that he was either in prison or he was on the run from the FBI or living under another name, and she thought it would be better for her boys to think that he was dead than think that he was in prison. So, but something happens where she basically decides it's time to tell them. Bruce was 19 at the time, and I guess Stephen would have been about 25 at the time, and she gathers the four boys in a room to let them know for the first time that actually your dad is alive. This doesn't sit very well with Bruce, and he did not speak to his mother, so he says, for another 25 years. She said that your father would like to meet you guys, and two say yes, two say no. The two younger ones say yes, they want to meet him. So Bruce at 19 and his younger brother Eric, who I think may have been 17, decide to go see their father, and they head off on a road trip. They hop in a truck and head off from Southern California up to Oregon. Sounds like it's from a movie. Two boys head up in a truck to go meet their father for the first time.
And what was the meeting like?
Well, they met him by the side of the road. That was because there wasn't Google in those days and cell phones and so on. So they pick a meeting point at the side of the road to meet him. And basically, he's going by another name. He's going by, instead of Benjamin Paddock, he's going by Bruce Erickson. So he took Bruce Paddock, his son's first name. He takes the other boy's first name, Eric, turns it into Eric's son. Get it? So Bruce Erickson is his new name, but he's known by Bingo Bruce up in Oregon at this point because he's running what's essentially an illegal bingo hall, part of his con man activities. And it didn't go very well. I think they spent 2 or 3 days with him. He mostly talked about himself. No tears are shed, no apologies, kind of typical psychopath behavior as a father.
Yeah. So that was that did not ease the trauma, just intensified it.
Probably, yeah. And interesting that Stephen had no interest in meeting him. But, you wonder, again, playing a psychologist here, what's going on when you're raised without a father and you're wanting to get the love of your father that you never did. Oftentimes replicating the behavior of father can be something that's done. So here's father out there robbing banks, and here's Stephen trying to beat the house in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, all that follows. I mean, that's a common pattern among, there's many adults who are very angry over fathers who have abandoned them, divorces, abuse. There's plenty of people running around with that kind of anger. And there's plenty of people who replicate their parents' sins. But so spectacularly, to kill 58 people and to shoot another 500, I mean, that's just unfathomable.
Yeah, so if Bruce believes that it was him, his brother acting alone, that he was in a controlling nature, and when he realized he couldn't beat the house and started losing, spectacularly, and also lost his girlfriend at the same time, that he would say that it was revenge. So here is a brother speculating, but getting into the head of his brother and saying that this was revenge. Revenge on the casino. Revenge on Las Vegas. He's going to screw the Mandalay Bay. He's going to screw Las Vegas by doing this. It's sick. Obviously, it's sick. So to say that's an explanation is, of course, silly. But, when you're sick.
Well, yeah, it's a crazy person. A crazy person might have a crazy trigger to do this. So Stephen Paddock his system was working for a long time. That's part of the reason he accumulated so much money, but then it stopped working.
Yeah. You've got one doctor saying he thought he was bipolar at one point. You've got him taking anti-anxiety medications. You have him maybe having an addiction to gambling. You've got child pornography also on his computer.
Stephen Paddock?
Yes.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Oh, yeah. Both brothers. And now that starts pointing back to Dad again a bit, and you wonder about Dad again. I'll just throw this out there, that if you look up the history of the father, he was known for volunteering at boys' clubs.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's a red flag there. You guys a few more minutes?
Sure.
Because I want to talk about just the general mystery that still hangs over this case, because there's so little information that has come out about the investigation and about the hotel's role. So just hang on. Jim Breslo, host of the Hidden Truth podcast. It's devoted to the Las Vegas shooting. More coming up. John and Ken Show, KFI, Deborah Marquez News.
Investigators.
John and Ken Show, John Cobalt and Ken Shampoo, KFI, AM 640. We continue with Jim Breslo. He's got a podcast called Hidden Truth, Las Vegas Shooter, HiddenTruthShow.com. And he got Bruce Paddock on as a guest. Bruce Paddock's brother, Stephen Paddock, who killed 58 and shot over 500 others in Las Vegas. And Bruce is dealing with his own child pornography charges, but sat down for an interview. We're talking about the relationship between the mom, the dad, the brothers. But Jim, I want to spend a few minutes on something that's been baffling. There was a headline just the other day in the LA Times. There's 750 hours of video, 2,000 calls to 911 from the Vegas shooting. Almost all of it is unseen and unheard. And there has seemed to be a news blackout for all these months where we don't know much more than we did on the first day.
Yeah, well, hence the reason why we're still digging. The thing that everybody's waiting for at this point is the FBI report. FBI is promising the report within the 1-year anniversary of the shooting. So we're at 6 months this Sunday. So that means we got another 6 months to go until we find out what the FBI has to say. That strikes us as a long time. There is a lot of things to dig through here and uncover. I think it is unusual that the FBI is releasing no information whatsoever. But, I do believe that it's a terror investigation, and that's what they're digging into. They're trying to see if there is a link to terror here. And don't forget, ISIS did claim responsibility for this shooting twice.
It would be really difficult to believe that Stephen Paddock had an ISIS connection.
Yeah, well, and we asked Bruce about that in the interview, and we have the first half posted up on the Hidden Truth Show, and we're going to be posting the second half on Sunday. We talk about that, but I would agree with you. On the one hand, it seems to be no connection. You do, however, have another scenario where there was the guy who's the former Marine, white guy, Marine, who converts to Islam, gets a Muslim name, and was going to attack Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, and that was busted by the FBI a few months ago. So until I heard that story, I would have normally thought, no way Stephen Paddock. Now, ISIS actually says that Paddock gave himself a Muslim name, and, they did claim responsibility very soon after the shooting. And you would think that normally the motive is discovered very quickly in these situations. So it does seem a little odd that ISIS would be so quick to claim responsibility when it could have been discredited very quickly. And frankly, it hasn't been fully discredited until now because we don't know what his motive was.
Mandalay Bay has also been, and the parent company, MGM, has been really squirrely about information. We only had the security guard in the hallway who briefly came out of hiding, did an Ellen DeGeneres interview, and there were 3 different stories spread about the timing of when he got to to Paddock's floor and when he got shot at. None of the stories added up because there were so many of them, and then he disappeared. And then the Las Vegas police stopped talking, MGM stopped talking. I wondered if the MGM fears it has tremendous liability, and because this is Las Vegas, they have great influence on the Las Vegas Police Department to shut up too?
Oh, you're poking at all kinds of things there, and all of those are correct. Yes, they're facing a massive, massive litigation. Remember, they were also the co-promoters of this event. And this event is happening directly across from their hotel. I obviously went and inspected the event and so forth and looked at it, and you look at where he shot from, and I hate to say it, but your reaction is, holy cow, he was in the perfect location to do what he did. And the natural question would be, you're directly across from 22,000 concert goers outside. You're the co-promoter of the event. Tell me, what extra security did you have in place at your hotel in light of this event? I guarantee you the attorneys are asking that question, and I have a feeling they don't have a good answer to that.
Because I would have thought that Las Vegas knows what a spectacular target it would be, and that they would constantly be on alert for mass killings.
Yeah. Now, did anybody anticipate this type of shooting? I mean, to give you an example of the fact that it wasn't anticipated, all of the police were deployed to the event. There was very few police that went to the Mandalay Bay. They all went to the event. Everybody there, you talked to the people that were at the event, they thought the shooters were on the ground. They were shooting from Las Vegas. They all thought there was multiple shooters, first of all, hence a lot of conspiracy theories. And they all assumed that they were being hunted down. So no one on the ground really anticipated it coming from a building. And all of the police are deployed. I mean, in an hour, they didn't breach his room until an hour after he stopped shooting. How many officers were there? 5 total officers there. All the rest of them is SWAT teams, et cetera, they're all on the ground at the festival.
A lot of people have found it hard to understand how a guy could walk in and out, and I'm talking about Stephen Paddock, into the hotel with so much weaponry, so much ammunition, and nobody at the hotel, nobody in security notices.
Yeah, well, I got a good one for you on that. If you listen to our interview at Hidden Truth Show with Bruce, he believes this was not the first time that his brother brought guns in there. Vegas is a notorious town for shooting ranges, and Paddock used to go shooting there all the time. So for a high roller to bring his guns up to his room to clean them or assemble them or what have you, I have a feeling, or maybe I'm getting this from Bruce, but that Stephen felt like, big deal. I mean, he was cool as a cucumber as they're bringing them up. Maybe they brought them up before, or maybe he knew that, hey, worst case, if they find him, I'm just saying, no big deal. I'm just, I was at the shooting range and I'm just bringing him up to my room. Oh, sorry, if I'm not allowed.
Are you I imagine you've made a lot of phone calls trying to get a lot of guests and a lot of comments on this. Are you finding that everybody involved is unusually tight-lipped? Are you having a hard time getting somebody to talk, even off the record?
Well, to be honest with you, we haven't even tried Vegas police and FBI because tons of media, especially in Vegas, have been trying to get that. As you point out, they've been tight-lipped. You're not going to get anything out of them. You've had one statement from FBI, and that's basically that they see no terror links. Vegas police, to their credit, you can go on our website, and we have the police report there, and it's about 80 pages long, and it's very detailed. There's a lot of detailed information in the Las Vegas police report.
Do you think that ultimately there's going to be some surprise twist that explains this, or at least explains why there's so little information out now? Is there something missing there?
I think so. Some people say, oh, gee, we may never know. I can't imagine that we're never going to know. I mean, the FBI, they've got 400 specialists on this thing. I mean, they're digging through everything. For all the stuff that we've uncovered, they've probably uncovered 10 times what we've uncovered. But, you do have things like the 7 cell phones. If this guy's acting alone, why did he have 7 cell phones? You've got a missing hard drive that they're trying to figure out. So, yes, I think we're going to learn something new before this is all over.
Do you have a hard time trying to keep yourself on the rails and not go off into conspiracy theory land?
Well, I'm naturally not necessarily a conspiracy theorist, but, when you don't have answers, then you got to look into those. So you can't scoff at them. So we look at them. ISIS is, if you call that a conspiracy theory, that's clearly one. You've got the Saudi prince theory. I don't know if you've heard that one, but
no.
The Saudi prince was staying at the Four Seasons above Paddock, and there's an allegation, and he wound up in jail 2 weeks later back in Saudi Arabia by the crown prince when he was putting the corruption charges.
Yeah.
So there's this conspiracy theory that there was an attempted assassination on the Crown Prince, who was also in Vegas at the time. Now, how it all ties together with Paddock, that takes a lot of patchwork, but just to give you an example of the type of stuff that's out there.
All right, Jim, good talking with you. Thank you.
John.
Thanks for
coming. Show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jim Breslo, host of the Hidden Truth podcast, and he's got part 2 of his interview with Bruce Paddock, and the website's hiddentruthshow.com. John and Ken Show, we come back along these lines. A report says that, this is from Las Vegas Review-Journal, that all the mass killers in America for 2017, they all had at least one thing in common. Tell you what it is when we come back. John and Ken, KFI, Deborah Marquez News.
2 security guards.